Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare। सभी लोग बोलिए, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare
Hare Krishna and good morning. Welcome to the program. Shri Bhagavatam and Attentive Japa class. And very auspicious day today, Prasva Kadashi and appearance of Lord Vamandev today. So please observe that if you can. We'll make a start. So today, still a conversation between Sage Maitreya and Vidur that we've been doing for the last 2 weeks. Now Sage Maitreya is telling Vidur about the conversation between Sanat Kumar and Lord Sankarshan. So, and explains what was discussed. So Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidur. He considered the company of Vidur most desirable because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensity for devotional service. And this is why association of devotees always recommended. And Sage Maitreya said he will answer Vidur's questions by reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam. He assures him that anyone who attentively hears this literature will transcend material suffering. Firstly, he describes how he came to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then describes Brahma's appearance on the lotus coming from Garbhodaksha Vishnu's abdomen and Brahma's vision of the world. So that's later on, we'll discuss that. Let's do a quick prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lamyate Girin Yat Kirpatam Mande Shri Guru Deem Taranam Pramananda Madhvam Shri Chitaneshram Hari Om Tassat. Narayan Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiriyat Nashta Presha Padareshu Nityam Bhagavad Sevya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Nestiki. So let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavad Puran, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the personality of Godhead for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries for the sake of very little pleasure. So Sage Maitreya proposed to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam because it was especially compiled and conditionally comes down in the disciplic succession. This is how it's heard for the solution of all problems of human society. Only one who is fortunate can have the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees of the Lord. Under the spell of material energy, the living entities are entrapped in the bondage of many difficulties simply for the sake of a little bit of material happiness. They engage in fruity activities, not knowing the implications. Under the false impression that the body is the self, the living entities foolishly relate to so many false attachments. They think that they are engaged with materialistic paraphernalia forever. This gross misconception of life is so strong that a person suffers continued life after life under the external energy of the Lord. So we think we can live forever. We can, we build so many relationships. We have a beautiful house, a beautiful car, beautiful family, and you think that this is going to go on forever. But then you find that just after a while, everything changes. Sometimes only the house is left. Everything else is gone from there. And then somebody else lives in that house and lives their life. And so it goes on. Sounds a little bit morbid, but this is the reality of life, how temporary life is. And this gross misconception of life is so strong that a person suffers continued life after life under the external energy of the Lord. If one comes in contact with the book Bhagavatam, as well as with the devotee Bhagavata, who knows what the Bhagavatam is, then such a fortunate man gets out of the material entanglement. Otherwise, she's just going in a vicious circle, life after life. Therefore, Maitreya Muni, such a fortunate man, gets out of the material entanglement. Therefore, Shri Chaitanya Maitreya Muni, out of compassion for the suffering man in the world, proposes to speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam first and last. So he explains that some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumar, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by all the great sages, including his other three brothers, the four Kumaras altogether, and other sages, inquired exactly like you about the truths regarding Vasudev, the Supreme, from Lord Sankarshan, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. Lord Sankarshan holds up the universe from the bottom. You can see there's posters showing this. This is in clarification of the statement that the Lord spoke directly on the Srimad Bhagavatam. When and unto whom the Bhagavatam was spoken is explained herewith. Questions similar to those put forward by Vidur were asked by great sages like Sanat Kumar and Lord Sankarshan. The plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord Vasudev answered these questions. So at that time, Lord Sankarshan was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, whom the learned esteemed as Lord Vasudev. But for the sake of the advancement of the great learned sages, he slightly opened his lotus-like eyes and began to speak. Now, these sages, they come from the highest planets down to the lower regions through the water of the Ganges. And therefore, the hair on their heads were wet. They touched the lotus feet of the Lord, which are worshipped with the various paraphernalia by the daughters of the Serpent King when they desire good husbands. The Ganges water flows directly from the lotus feet of Vishnu, and its course runs from the highest planets of the universe down to the lowest. The sages came down from Satyalok by taking advantage of the flowing water. So this is a method of travel through the water and especially Ganges, because this flows all over the universe. A process of transportation made possible by the power of mystic yoga. If a river flows thousands and thousands of miles, a perfect yogi can at once transport himself from one place to another simply by dipping in its water. So he just dips in, and the next thing now he's out on the other side straight away. The Ganges is the only celestial river which flows throughout the universe, and great sages travel all over the universe via this sacred river. The statement that their hair was wet indicates that it was directly moistened by the water originating from the lotus feet of Vishnu, i.e. the Ganges. Whoever touches the water of the Ganges to his head surely touches the lotus feet of the Lord directly and can become free from all effects of sinful acts. Now, if after taking a bath in the Ganges or being washed of all sins, a man guards himself against committing further sinful acts, then certainly he is delivered. So, if you cleanse yourself by taking a bath in the Ganges, and then you commit sinful acts again, what was the point? You contaminated again. So you have to make sure you remain uncontaminated. That's the only way. But if he again takes up sinful activities, his bath in the Ganges is good as that of elephant, who nicely takes his bath in a river, but later spoils the whole thing by covering himself with dust on the land. So this is what the elephant does. And and this is what we do. We ask for forgiveness, we do penance, and then we're back again doing the same thing. So what's the point? So the four Kumaras, headed by Sanat Kumar, who all knew the transcendental pastime of the Lord, glorified the Lord in rhythmic accents with selected words full of affection and love. At that time, Lord Sankarshan, with his thousands of raised hoods, began to radiate an effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. The Lord is sometimes addressed as Uttam Shlok, which means one who is worshipped with selected words by devotees. A profusion of such selected words comes from a devotee who's fully absorbed in affection and love for the devotional service of the Lord. Now, there are many instances in which even a small boy who was a great devotee of the Lord could offer excellent praise in the choicest words for glorification of the pastimes of the Lord. In other words, without the development of fine affection and love, one cannot offer praise to the Lord very suitably. So it has to come from the heart, otherwise it's just artificial, and it shows that's artificial. Lord Sankarshan thus spoke the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam to the great sage Sanat Kumar, who had already taken the vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumar also, in his turn, who inquired of by Sankhya Yan Muni, explained Srimad Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Sankarshan. So this is passed on in the parampara. This is the way of the parampara system. Although Sanat Kumar, the well-known great saintly Kumar, was the imperfect stage of life, still he heard the message of Srimad Bhagavatam from Lord Sankarshan. Similarly, when he was questioned by Sankhyan Rishi, he spoke to him the same message he heard from Lord Sankarshan. In other words, unless one hears from the proper authority, one cannot become a preacher. In devotional service, therefore, two items of the 9, namely hearing and chanting, are most important. Without hearing nicely, one cannot preach the message of Vedic knowledge. So if you hear nicely, then you can preach nicely. They are directly proportional to each other. The great sage Sankhyayan was a chief amongst the transcendentalists. And when he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam, it so happened that my spiritual master Prashar and Brahaspati both heard him. So this is Maitre Muni talking to Vidur. He's telling him that when Sankhyavan was when he was describing glories to Prashar Muni, and Brahaspati was also present there. So great sage Prashar as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulastya, spoke unto me the foremost of the Puran, i.e. Srimad Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. So the heading of the class is that Sanat Kumar inquires from Sankarshan, Lord Sankarshan. So this is the same information that's been passed on, and now it's been passed on from Maitreya to Vidur. So he's explaining that the great sage of the name Pulastya is the father of all demonic descendants. Once upon a time, Prussia became a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burned to death because his father had been killed and devoured by one of them. So Prussia Muni's father, he was actually eaten by a demon. So he was so angry that he was going to do a yajna and kill them all. Now the great sage Vishishta Muni arrived at the sacrifice and requested Prussia Muni to stop the deadly action. And because of Vishishta's position and respect in the community of sages, Prussia Muni couldn't deny the request. Prussia, having stopped the sacrifice, Pulastya, the father of the demons, appreciated his Brahmanical temperament and gave the blessing that in the future he would be a great speaker on the Vedic literatures called the Puranas, the supplements of the Vedas. Prussia Muni's action was appreciated by Pulastya because Prussia Muni had forgiven the demons out of his Brahmanical power of forgiveness. Prussia Muni was able to demolish all the demons in the sacrifice, but he considered demons are so made that they devour living creatures. That's their propensity. So men and animals. But why on the account should I withdraw my Brahmanical qualification of forgiveness? So why should he not use his forgiveness quality as a Brahman when he knows very well that this is what demons do? It's their nature to do that. So why would he withhold the quality he has been given? So he forgave them. So Prussia was able to demolish all the creatures. So Prussia, excuse me. So as the great speaker of Puranas, Prussia first of all spoke on the Srimad Bhagavatam Puran because it is the foremost of all the Puranas. Maitreya Muni desired to narrate the same Bhagavatam he had heard from Prussia Muni, and Vidur was qualified to hear it because of his faithfulness and his following the instructions received from superiors. So if you hear nicely, humbly, then you are qualified to hear. So Srimad Bhagavatam was being narrated from time immemorial by the disciplic succession, even before the time of Vyasadeva. The so-called historians calculate the Puranas to be only a few hundred years old, but factually the Puranas existed from time immemorial before all historical calculation by the mundaners and speculative philosophers. So it's mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam that in the beginning, so at the time when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodaksha Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead. The great snake Ananta and although he appeared to be in his slumber, in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. So the Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestations. So this is the information we get in Bhagavatam, things like this, because unless we are told, given this information, we can only speculate. We will never know how the creation works, because every religion have got their own stories, how the creation begins, and scientists have their own versions of how the creation begins. But Srimad Bhagavatam explains exactly and explains every minute detail how, not that it just happened in 7 days and just the overall view. It explains in very, very minute detail how the creation begins. So just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorating energy called Kal, which is time. After the three worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planet system merged into the water of dissolution. The living entities of all the three worlds remained in the subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kal. In this dissolution, the gross bodies became unmanifest, but the subtle bodies existed just like the water of the material creation. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up, as is the case in the full dissolution of the material worlds. So there's two kinds of dissolution. So this is just the temporary or the partial dissolution is been mentioned here, and just giving like a gist of how it happens. So the Lord laid down for 1,000 cycle of 4 yugas in his internal potency, and by his external energy he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development of the fruitive activities actuated by the energy called Kal Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. Now in the Vishnu Puran, Kal Shakti is mentioned as avidya. The symptom of the influence of the Kal Shakti is that one has to work in the material world for fruitive results. The fruitive workers are described in Bhagavad-Gita as mudas, or foolish. Such foolish living entities are very enthusiastic to work for some temporary benefit within perpetual bondage. One thinks himself very clever throughout his life if he is able to leave behind him a great asset of wealth for his children. And to achieve his temporary benefit, he takes the risk of all sinful activities without knowledge that such activities will keep him perpetually bound by the shackles of material bondage, because you're just creating karma for yourself and for your next life. Due to this polluted mentality and due to material sins, the aggregate combination of living entities appear to be bluish. Such an impetus of activity for fruitive results is made possible by the dictation of the external energy of the Lord Kal. So we started with this, and we sort of ending on this subject about how we just perpetually every life we are doing things, we're creating more karma, and then we get an appropriate life according to our karma, and then we create more karma. So it just goes on and on. And this is, it's been mentioned that this is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything we discuss is from the scriptures. It's been mentioned in there by some sages, or the Lord himself is mentioned in there. So this is the philosophy we follow. So I hope it made some kind of sense. There's a lot of information there, and but it's all about, today is all about Srimad Bhagavatam and how it's passed on and what kind of contents it has. So thank you so much, and would love to hear your views on this that we just discussed. We'll start with the I'll start with welcoming you for at least my father-in-law ji, Rukmini Mataji, iPhone, I think is probably Natashan Prabhu, Jai Prabhu, Partha Prabhu, Praveen Mataji, Prem Prakash Prabhu, Sriveshya Mataji, and Dayani Mataji. So thank you all so much for joining. Rukmini Mataji, would you like to say something, add something to this?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna,
Nothing. This is perfect. I can't add anything.
Yeah, it was
I have
quite,
to just listen. We can't add. This is everything so amazing. Lord remain in water, and this thing, all these things, it goes on and on. Lovely class, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, a lot of information. And next week, we're going to talk about Lord Brahma, how he manifests from. So we sort of started talking about Srimad Bhagavatam, what information he has about the creation. And next week, we're going to talk about how Lord Brahma takes birth.
So Lord remain in the water for how long?
Well, for the full creation, Lord in the form of Garbhodaksh Vishnu, he remains in the water. It's expansion of Lord Krishna. So he remains there as lifetime, at least the lifetime of Brahma. Brahma lives for 311 trillion years, his full life is. And his one day is 1,000 full cycles of yugas, which is, I think, 4.32 billion years. He's one.
Oh,
So after one day, there's a partial annihilation of the low planets. The upper planets remain, like Brahmlok, obviously. The low planets are destroyed. They'll get submerged underwater. And then Brahma sleeps for 4.22 billion years. That's his night. While we all rest inside Garnodakshaya Vishnu. And then after, when the day begins again, as we were discussing last week, Brahma has to create the lower planets and everything once again. And he takes inspiration from Vishnu.
thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Jai Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I think the main topic today is about Srimad Bhagavatam and how he's come down in this cyclic succession. So the Bhagavad Purana was directly spoken to the great sages by the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the benefit of those who are entangled in material misery. So traditionally, the Bhagavatam comes down in this cyclic succession, providing a solution to the problems of human society. Only one who is fortunate gets to hear the Bhagavatam in the association of a pure devotee. So living entities, they chase after this, simple bit of pleasure, which causes them suffering life after life. They don't know this. So Maitramuni, he tells Vidura that Sanat Kumara just inquired, like just Vidura is inquiring with Maitramuni about the truth regarding Vasudeva from Lord Sankarshan. So who is Lord Sankarshan? He's a perennial expansion of the Supreme Lord who lies at the bottom of the universe. If I'm correct, I think he's also known as Lord Ananta and also Seshnag. So I don't know what the three names for him, but and Sanat Kumara, he's a great sage and one of the four Kumaras. So the Kumara to the sons of Lord Brahma, I think.
Yeah.
So Lord Sankarshan spoke the Bhagavatam to Sanat Kumara, who'd already taken a vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumara in turn spoke it to what's his name, Sankhya Muni, and explained the Bhagavad to him. So this is the way of the Parampa system. One should hear the Bhagavatam directly from someone that is connected to the Lord and serves the Lord. Unless one hears from a proper authority, he's not really qualified to preach himself. So I think, and also you talked about the Ganges. One who taps the water on the Ganges on the head becomes free from sin. And so you mentioned the elephant, like elephant who bathes himself and covers himself with mud. Hindu priest keeps on telling us a story about, there's like three men that went to the bathe in the Ganges. Only one of them, believed all his sins could be washed. The other two weren't too sure. So the one who had the faith and believed he had his sins washed. The other two didn't. Yeah, so you could have the faith as well, I think. Yeah, okay, I'll leave you there. Thanks.
So very nicely explained. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yeah, as you mentioned, Srimad Bhagavatam, it's passed on this succession. I mean, it says here a few hundred years ago, but it's written by Vyasadeva 5,000 years ago. But it was written, so it came on paper 5,000 years ago. Before that, it was transferred by sound, verbally. The Vedas and everything, they were always discussed by verbally. And so it was there. Bhagavatam was there in the ether, in the sound, but then it was recorded on paper 5,000 years ago. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Okay, Pastor Prabhu, I think he's not able to speak. Parveen Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yes, sorry, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Danvat Pranam. Yeah, Jay Prabhu summarized very beautifully. He's picked up
Yeah.
all the points. So yes, my only realization is that we have to, stop the fruitive activities. Otherwise, we are creating more karmas. And we are very fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has shown us the way to the devotional service. And yeah, I think that's about it. And like Jay Prabhu has picked up all the points and importance of Bhagavatam and Bhagavata. So we are very fortunate to be in association of devotees that we are getting to hear the Bhagavatam and importance of disciplic succession. Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. Okay, was Partha Prabhu's read something? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. Jai. Okay. Thank you. Yes, it's all about the attitude. Right. So Rishi Mataji.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Lord Sankarshan, he glorifies Lord Krishna with 1,000 mouths, but still he can't do it because his glories are unlimited. So these Kumaras, that's why they went to Sankarshan and inquire about the Lord. Sanat, Sanatan, Sanak and Sanatan were the fifth sons of Lord Brahma. They remained celibate, looked like 5 years old. They traveled everywhere in the universe freely. Kumaras were Gyanis before, but after smelling the Tulsi leaf in Vaikunt, they become pure devotees of the Lord. Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukrantu arjuna artho jigyasi arthati gyani cha bharastabha. O best of Bharat, among the Bharatas, the 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotion service unto me. The distressed, the desire of wealth, inquisitive, and who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. So these Kumaras, they were inquisitive and they were searching for knowledge. That's why they approached Sankarshan. Kumaras were inquisitive to know the truth about Supreme Lord from Sankarshan. So we should learn from Kumaras. We should be inquisitive as well to know the truth about Supreme Lord. Best way is to learn it through the parampara system, like Sant Kumaras from Sankarshan, Sankhya Muni from Kumaras, Parasara Muni from Sankhya Muni, and Matra Muni from Parasar. From Parasar, Vidur from Matra Muni. From Parasar, Vidur from Matra Muni. It is important to glorify the Lord with nice prayers. All the devotees in the Bhagavad, mostly they glorify the Lord with very nice prayers, and it is called Uttam Slok. So Krishna's another name is Uttam Slok, because the people, the devotees, they try to please the Lord with slokas. And we can learn some slokas from Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's like to please Krishna, especially when we do prayer in the morning. It's very important. We can learn few slokas to glorify Krishna, will be very pleased. And in Bhagavatam, all the devotees, including Brahma and Shiva and Narada, they also glorify the Lord to please him. And in the dissolution, the subtle body enters into the Lord Vishnu and then appears at the time of creation. And they are given gross body according to their activities and desires. So what are we fruitive activities we do and desire we have? When we went into Lord Vishnu, the dissolution, then when we appear with the same kind of body as we desire. And there are 3 kinds of devotees, Jnanis, they do devotional says it for their own benefit because they want to merge into impersonal Brahma. And the yogis, the Paramatma, so they can select their own time, when to leave the body, where to go. But the bhaktas, the devotees, the selfless, they do bhakti only to please Krishna. So we should be devotees and do devotional service to Lord Krishna, to please Krishna. And at the time of creation, because when we go inside Krishna, when we are born again, we get a devotee's body to serve Krishna. And we should inquire and ask questions about the Supreme Lord from spiritual masters. So when we have these classes, that's why people ask, they're inquisitive, they inquire about the Supreme Lord, and that's how we're gonna learn. So that's what Sant Kumaras, they knew, they were devotees, but it's never enough. It's knowledge about Lord Krishna is unlimited. Nobody can explain. Even if there's so many lifetime you take life, but you can't explain. So they went to Sankarshan, and even he can't. He tries to do it 1,000 mouths, but he can't do it. So Krishna's activities is so unlimited. Only Krishna, even Krishna doesn't know. Sometimes he doesn't know his activities. So what we should do, we should just inquire from spiritual masters, learn from Bhagavatam, etc. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely right. And you're talking about the consciousness. Yeah. Prabhupada, he was very appropriately named this moment Krishna consciousness, because this is all our energies and available time. We should be pushing our consciousness into Krishna consciousness. Very, very important, because it is all about the consciousness. Whatever consciousness we have at the time of death is that will determine where we land, where we end up, what kind of body we get, what kind of mother we have, what kind of species we go into. It's all about our conscious. It's automatic. Wherever your conscious, whatever the shape or the whatever state the consciousness is in, it will drive you towards that. That is your like launching pad. It will take you towards that kind of body. It's the law. It's the law of nature. It's the law of Krishna. It's going to take you that kind of body. Even subtle things like if somebody died in a very angry state, right? Somebody died in a very angry state, they find that even if they get like human body, we even find animals, some are very peaceful, some are very angry. So if you die in a very angry state, in your next life, you won't understand yourself, that why do I get so much aggression? Why am I so angry? Something that happened in your past life at the time of death that you carried forward into your next life. So it's little things like that as well. So very, very important that we don't carry attachments, and we don't have any bonding with things unnecessarily. Okay, our attachment should be to Krishna, and all our concentration should be on going back home and achieving a spiritual body. That should be our aim, not other things, not other desires. We have to purify ourselves from the worldly desires, otherwise we will come back into a proper body to suffer or enjoy those desires according to our karma. So thank you all so much. Hope that makes some kind of sense.
Another thing, Prabhu, I found in Bhagavad, the Lord, the Rukmani Mataji asked that question. The Lord lay down for 4,000 yuga cycles in his intelligence.
Mataji is 1,000, so it's four yugas.
4,000 yugas. That's one yuga is because in one yuga that's 71 manus with 71 manus, and then four yugas like
Sure. It's a cycle of yugas. So there's 4 yugas, cycle of yugas together times 1,000. Yeah, you're right. It's 4 yugas. So it's a cycle of yugas, it's the 4 yugas.
Yeah.
So times 1,000, which is 4.32 billion years. Yeah. So it's like full yugas, Satyug, and up to Kali Yuga.
71
Times 1,000.
manus. Yeah. 71 manus, and then when it finishes is 1 yuga. That means 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you. Okay. Rukmini Mataji, would like to start the round? We'll do a couple of rounds.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol.
Yes.